Yeah, in the United States, we have lawyers, so throwing chocolates at people's, maybe a little more dicey. But welcome, welcome. Thank you for having me. It's been a while since I've been at a Smashing Conf, or any conf for that matter, so it's very good to be back. And this time around, it's not just me here. I also brought a couple friends, so here they come. My little AI guys and I are here to talk about what happens when AI eats a website. And when you think about that, when you think about the concept of AI eating a website, maybe that conjures some scary thoughts in your heads, right? AI eating a website. What could that possibly look like? Like maybe a giant computer brain out there consuming all this information. My little guys. On its way to global dominance. Maybe that's what you think about, maybe not. And this is, by the way, I promised some audience participation. If any of you are near a balloon, are any of you near a balloon? Okay, so could you stand? If you're near a balloon, can you stand up? Okay, just stand up. It's okay, don't worry. If you're near a balloon, stand up and kind of put your foot over it, if you will. Okay, and when I count to the count of 3, I just want to time this next animation with the popping of balloons. See how loud. You can pop a balloon however you want, okay? You ready? Let's see if we can do this together. Everybody good? 1, 2, 3. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, don't worry, my little AI guys will be back. They didn't completely get obliterated by that giant AI brain. Now, in truth, when most people think about the concept of artificial intelligence, or AI for short, we can talk about whether it's a good name or bad name later, but when people think about that concept today, they probably think of something like ChatGPT. Right? And ChatGPT is this large language model that you can ask all sorts of questions like, who the hell is this speaker? And it does a pretty decent job of answering because it's been trained on huge amounts of data. And so the response it gives about me is, fairly decent. So I no longer need an intro slide in my talks anymore, right? You can just go and talk to ChatGPT about it. But it's not just my website that's part of these huge training sets that creates these large language models, these big AI models. They also go across the entire internet, and effectively, because they're essentially predicting this next token in a sequence, next word, if you will, to autocomplete with, sometimes they are pretty good at predicting very likely but incorrect answers. So if I follow up this intro about me to where did I go to school, it's highly likely that a product designer like me in the United States went to a school like CMU, which is what it says I did, but I did not. So I can say, I think Luke went to the University of Illinois, which is where I actually went. And you're like, you're right, but he actually went to grad school at Carnegie Mellon, which I did not. Keeps insisting that I did, though. No problem, though, but these things are so tuned with reinforcement learning that you can tell them to do anything, and they're just there to please you, right? So I was like, did he really go? Oh, I'm so sorry. No, he didn't. You're right. Now, you can really veer off the rails, which I'm not going to do here with these because I think my intro slides were weird enough for now. So we'll just kind of leave it at this and zoom out a little bit to see what is the relationship between these large AI models, and in particular these large language models and websites. So you've got my website. You've got billions of other websites, and all of these things are filled with tons and tons of text. And so when these large language models are trained, when they're taught how to figure out what to say next after the previous word or token, which is just a chunk of a word, they go through a series of operations, lots of big, slow, and expensive operations to figure out what to say next. Then you get this sort of immense auto-completion experience like ChatGPT. And the whole idea of training giant machine brains on the totality of published content on the internet can lead people to conjure these scary AI narratives or stories. But I don't think that's that useful when thinking about what to do with a new technology. I've been around for a while, like when the web came out and mobile came out, and there was similar reactions at the beginning to what's happening with these interaction possibilities. And so instead, what I found is it's always much easier, not easier, but it's much better to take a step back and figure out what's going on here and how can I actually use it to create better user experiences, to change how people interact with digital information and the like. You know, what can you do now with mobile that you couldn't do with the web? What can you do with the web that you couldn't do previously with print? And what can you do with AI that you couldn't previously do with everything that came before it? So, ChatGPT, which I demoed a second earlier, is an AI model, but it's just one kind of AI model. It's a large language model. There's lots of different ones out there, and they can be used for a very wide range of tasks, like language tasks, such as translating speech to text or creating artificial speech. You can use them for vision tasks, like facial recognition or object detection, what have you. There's this wide range of capabilities that they provide for you, and the list goes on, right? I've just sort of listed some of the more classical AI use cases up here. And when you have a sense of what these things can do, you can start to apply those to our websites. And the really big thing that's different from a couple of years ago, you could do a lot of this stuff with AI models, but there weren't these general purpose things you can download from the internet and just start running like you have now. And so because all these things are available in pretty accessible ways, you can start to experiment with them and you can start trying to build things yourself. And many, many people are, right? If you pay any attention to tech news, it's AI, AI, AI left and right. And sometimes there's an allergic reaction to that, but for me personally, I actually believe in this situation, there is a lot of potential here and a lot of super interesting things to do. And so I understand and appreciate a lot of the excitement. And with a lot of these capabilities, I think we can make the web really, really cool again. Because to be honest, like, it hasn't been cool for a while, right? There's been a lot of other things sort of popping up and grabbing people's attention. It's not like people are running around and being like, website, right? But maybe they will again. So with that in mind, I want to show you how we used a bunch of these AI capabilities to create a new way of using my little website, which is here. I started this website 27 years ago. That's probably older than... Is anybody here under 27? Just, okay, yeah, see. So I'm old as dirt. That's the first thing we learned. Second thing we learned is over 27 years, you can actually create a lot of content by just doing it regularly. So this website's got 2,000 articles, it's got 100 videos, 300-something PDF presentations, a bunch of audio, a couple books. And if you want to get to this stuff via a website, via a web browser, you kind of have roughly 2-ish options, right? So you can either search all this stuff, or you can browse all this stuff. Or maybe somebody sends you a link and then you fall into something directly. But if you're coming to it cold, you can do one of these two things. But this is a lot of stuff to wade through. And God bless people who go through 500,000 words that I've written over 27 years. Or 3,000 almost minutes of audio, 6,000 minutes of video. That's a lot to get through to find what you're looking for. But even here, 35-something years after the dawn of the web, these are still the primary modes by which people are getting information. Now, in the real world, like we're in now, and we'll do a little bit later in these comfy chairs, if you have a question for me, you can just be like, hey, Luke, how do I decide which metrics to pick for my app? And in the real world, I'll do something like, let me think about what I know, kind of remember a bunch of things from maybe all the stuff that I've written or things I've seen or things I've read, and then put together an answer in my head in milliseconds and respond. So good news about the scary AI brain is the human brain is still pretty flippin' amazing and way more interesting than any AI brain we've got out there. But that real-world experience of you just asking me a question and me responding to it directly by thinking about what I know, putting it together into something coherent, It's quite different than when you get on the internet, right? You can do a search, in which case you're wading through all these different links, right? You sort of read the summary, you click on it, you say, is that what I wanted? I don't know, go back, maybe click on the other thing. Or you can browse. Which one of these is it? Maybe you can like filter it down by a keyword or something. Control F to find what you're looking for. You know all the tricks. But what if instead we could get closer to the way I'd answer your question in real life? That is, I'd go through all the things I've written or said on the topic, put them together into a coherent reply, and even cite the sources. Well, this is what we've actually built using a lot of these AI tasks that I outlined for you. And I'm going to talk about what this experience is like, and then I'll talk about how it's built. But right now, let me just show you kind of how it works. So you say, how do I pick metrics for my app? And it goes to pick metrics for your app. First, you need to decide what to change. Then you need to figure out what have you. And then up pop these little citations that provide backup, because this is the information where these responses mostly come from. And I'll get back to the topic of mostly in a second. But here, since there's this citation, maybe I want to go deeper. I can kind of click on this little source, and then it takes me to the specific point in the video. You can see it's been kind of moved to that scrubber. And actually, even on the slide, right, you can see how to decide what to measure. So in this case, there was some content in a video that I had that probably provides a decent chunk of the information that was used to answer the question you saw a second ago. And there's a bunch of other things on this page that are also generated through AI, like the transcript, the description, the topics, the diarization. We'll get to all of that. But effectively, there's like 7 or 8 different AI tasks that were run to build out this experience. And this gets to the point that I was saying earlier. This is what happens when these AI models effectively eat the pieces of content that make up my website, and they spit out a very different interaction model. So most people's reaction is like, well, how do you do that? But first I want to talk about what it is, and then we'll get into how do you do that. And to address what might be the elephant in the room, some of you might be thinking, I ask a question, you respond with an answer. Didn't you just build a chat bot? We'll talk about that. But I think a lot of people's brain goes to these chat bots and chat experiences because, holy darn, we spend a lot of time inside of our messaging apps. Half of you are probably on a messaging app right now. The other half of you are thinking about it. Do I have a message? And the layout of these things, because we see this all the time, the layout of these things is so ingrained in our heads, right? There's these sort of like, you respond, I respond, alternating question-response UIs, and then how much text somebody writes determines the size of the content. If the message goes long, it grows, what have you. So a lot of times when people think about these types of experiences, ask a question, get an answer, they kind of jump straight to these types of chat interaction patterns. But perhaps unsurprisingly, it turns out that this design pattern isn't really the best way to have conversations with sets of documents, or in general, to interact with some of these large language model type of capabilities. So Nielsen Norman did a bunch of usability studies recently, and they found a bunch of issues with this interaction pattern, in particular with people's need to scroll long conversation threads to find and extract information. The point I want to call out is actually at the bottom, which is this behavior is a significant point of friction, which we observed with everybody that we saw in the study. Right? You get these big, long chains of text where you're actually trying to get information or put that information together into something coherent. It's not like talking with your friends. So why does that pattern apply? And to account for these kinds of issues and then a few other things that we came across as working through the design of this, we actually made use of a pretty different interaction model, which looks something a bit more like this. Let me actually move that over and we can look at it. So here what we're doing is each previous question you ask and its answer are kind of collapsed. You see the question, see a little bit of the answer, and then the current question and answer is open by default. But if you open it up until here, let's look at this on a big screen, right? So you can see the previous question and answer pairs. You can scan those and kind of come back to a part that was interesting to you. The current one is open, but you can make your way in open up any other one, and kind of interact with these things as needed. So that helps to deal with the scanning and the accessibility of information and those kinds of things. There's also an interaction to pin stuff and save it. So as you're working through something, you can kind of, oh, save this part, save that part. There's probably a bit more we could do there. But it's trying to account to what are people actually trying to do with this information as opposed to taking an existing design pattern. Because it turns out after these iterations, taking a step back, it was like, oh, this is almost like what people do with FAQs. Have you ever seen an FAQ site or like a help site? There's always like these expand and collapse question and answer pairs, and there's a search thing at the top. And so going through these design iterations landed on something that's a bit more like what you see over here than this chatbot kind of pattern, right? And I'd like to pause for a second here and just call out, this example is illustrative of why you start with the problem and understand the problem space and don't start with the solution. If you just start with the solution, oh, chatbot, you may never find something that perhaps works better or perhaps is different or unique. Over and over again, I just see people starting their design process with something like a competitive audit, where they go and look at what other companies are doing. I know I got to design a login form. Let me go look at a bunch of login forms. Oh, there's login forms. And then what do you end up with? Something that looks exactly like that stuff, even if you don't want to. It's like when you're riding a bike and you look at a tree, you know where you're going to steer into? The tree. So whether intentionally or not, you may end up kind of copying what you see instead of letting the problem space guide the solution. So if you ask my little AI, why do so many designs look the same? You know, it cites similar kinds of things to what I was talking about here. Now, we have this expandable conversational interface, right? You ask a question, you get an answer. You can see previous and answer ones. You can, but I've deliberately left something out of the screenshot just to kind of simplify it on the big screen. And it's a pretty important thing, so I'll kind of bring it back here, which is every time we provide an answer, we also go through and fire off a bunch of suggested questions. The first few of these are related to the question you asked. The additional ones come from the bigger set of contexts. And these are really, really important because they address this problem that people face of what should I ask? In fact, when you come to the site, it lists a bunch of suggested questions, and you can keep hitting more, and just get an infinite number of questions. Now you may say, oh, Luke, it must have taken you forever to write all these questions for your 2,000 pages, right? This is one of the things I want to kind of hopefully get across to you. I just let the AI do it. Here's a document. Tell me a bunch of questions that this paper answers. Okay, here you go. Run it across all the different pieces of content we have, and you've got a whole bunch of suggested questions. Now, we knew these were important, so we really wanted to make sure people could see it, right? This is a classic issue of voice interactions and chat interactions. People don't know what to ask because they don't know what the system can answer. And I'm not suggesting this fixes that problem completely, but just thinking about that problem is important in designing these kinds of products. So the first iteration we made, right next to the send button, you had a little like, give me a suggestion, and then it would provide a response of all these possible things you could ask. And then it's like, yeah, is the light bulb really clear? That's kind of lame. So then we changed it to, what else can I ask? But all these things required people to say they want this, which isn't great, right? It kind of puts the burden on the person. So then we began exploring a series of designs that kind of put things right below. And there's another version of it. It looks a little bit more like this. You can't really see the gray. Trust me, they're a little different. But anyway, we kind of continued on a bunch of these interactions until we finally got to the pattern of you get an answer, and directly below that answer comes these suggested questions. Which I asked this weird question of my AI, what does it mean to divert the train? And it's actually the principle that's at play here, which I should have thought of at the beginning, which is don't try to like move people to different parts of the interface. Like kind of go with the flow, right? You're on this train, on the train line, instead of trying to shift it to the left or to the right, which is really hard because big train, chugga chugga, right? So here they're reading the answer. Ooh, suggested questions come up right there. So the answer that's here is coming from relevant parts of documents. We stitch them together, and as I said earlier, there's a little citation there. So here we're coming back to the diagram of version of this. These are the most prominent sources that are used to create that information. As you see a little bit later, it's not the only thing that provides the answer there, but those are the big ones. And instead of just sort of linking out to this, which is pretty common, right? You're like, oh, we use this website, click on it, and then you go to some very different experience. What we tried to do is actually create a unified, cohesive interface for all these objects, but one that sort of worked within the bigger structure. So if you click on one of those things, it sort of shows up within this space, and then there's a few new interactions that you can do with it. I won't get too into this now because I'll show it a bit later, but this is sort of what it looks like on the big screen. This article has some information around why free shipping helps in e-commerce. You click on it, and now you can actually read that article inline here, and there's a bunch of stuff put together, including the ability for you to just ask questions within this source. You see that little green thing there? You can X that out and get out of it. So we'll talk about that a bit in a second, but note that there's lots of different types of documents going on. It's not just web pages. We've got videos, podcasts, PDFs. And now I want to jump a little bit into like how do you take these existing things, web pages you've already got, PDF presentations you've already got, videos like are being recorded now. Woo! No? That's for the camera. Apparently they're recording this, so now that will be ingrained forever. Videos, you know, all that good stuff. So how do we break that stuff down and then reassemble it? How do we eat all this stuff with AI and then put together a cohesive user experience? So if we start with video, first thing we need to do if you've got video, you kind of have to turn the words I'm saying now into written words. And so for that, we use a speech-to-text model. And that runs that task. So you grab all these videos, you basically use AI to extract all of the text and turn it into, or all the speech and turn it into text. Then we do something that does diarization, which identifies the different speakers and provides timestamps on when each person's talking. We also do summarization, keyword extraction, all this good stuff. And then we experimented a little bit with object detection and facial recognition, but it turns out for my site, not that useful because it's usually just me standing on the stage doing stupid things like yelling woo for the camera. So you just get Luke, 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 and not useful. And then there's a bunch of things that we do in terms of processing, which I'll get to in a little bit. But what I want to talk about for half a second is this little AI task that I just popped up here, which is keyframe selection. So you may have a situation where you need a really specialized thing. So let me explain that with more detail. So we've got all these videos, right? And when we put them in the interface, we need to have a nice thumbnail. How would you traditionally do this as a designer? Well, you're going to go through the flipping video, you're going to find a nice thumbnail, you're going to either screenshot it, whatever, and then you're going to, right? So instead what we did is we just whipped out like 100 thumbnails per video, and then did a little bit of fine-tuning on an existing AI model that just told it how to pick a good one from here. And so a good one is, you know, I don't look stupid. It's not just a screenshot. Eyes are open, show the speaker, that kind of thing. As another example, here you can see a little bit more like where you get just like crappy screenshots in general. It does a nice job of making sure that it grabs the "which Paris girl are you" background for me, which is probably the best one it could have chosen. Although I do still have a bit of a stupid grin, so it's not perfect. But again, this is a nice little example of one of the main points I want to give to you is when you think, oh, I need to do this, you got all this capability now where you can basically just automate this. Right? If you can model a behavior, if you can just sort of say, here's how I pick a good thumbnail, as a human, you can train a machine to do that at scale and blast through all your videos and do it for you. It doesn't take a ton of examples nowadays. It just takes a few. Because you've got an existing AI model, and you just, with fine-tuning, you just sort of like tweak the last couple bits of it to do the specific task that you want it to do. So it has tasks like object recognition or what have you. And then you say, well, I just want it to kind of do this little part. And away you go. So in addition to video files, we also have audio files, so podcasts, interviews, the like. It does lots of similar things with audio to what it does with video. And a couple things we did build but ended up not shipping just because it kind of sucks. We actually have a version that will read stuff to you in my voice, but man, is it boring to just sit there and listen to blah, blah, blah. You can read so much faster. So it doesn't do that. But similar speech-to-text, speech diarization. And then the part that I want to spend a little bit of time on here is this cleanup step. Right? So you go through and you use these AI models to generate a bunch of things, but there's still stuff that you need to do to make sure that the data that you then want to reassemble into your interface is clean, is good. So there's all this data processing stuff. For example, you want to make sure Luke is Luke. Right? And my last name, good luck trying to make sure that it's always consistently written out. So we do some steps to fix that. We have metadata about the files, so we want to join that, like the location, the type, date, those sorts of things that you can't just capture out of something like a transcript. And then last but not least, another important piece is to break this stuff down into little meaningful chunks. Because what we're ultimately going to be doing is using all those little chunks of these videos, of these text files, of everything, to find the most relevant ones and stitch them together into these responses. And we have to do the same thing for web articles and the like. But anyway, we kind of use these AI models to run these tasks. We clean up the end result. We break it down into little pieces. And then the next question is, well, how do we assemble all these into actually making an answer? So this is where I'm going to get semi-loosely technical for just 2 slides. Bear with me. I know this is a design conference. But all these chunks of content get mapped to this multi-dimensional vector space. And all that means is things that are similar-ish, like things that are touch gesture-ish, are kind of in the same area of this multi-dimensional space. Things that are e-commerce-ish are over here. So when you're looking for an answer to a question about e-commerce-ish things, it kind of grabs this sort of stuff. And the way this looks in the obligatory system diagram, right? You've seen this everywhere. You've got all these documents, you do a lot of cleaning, and then you throw it into this multidimensional space, and then you go in there and try and find stuff. Now, sometimes people just use one way to find stuff, but you can also use multiple ways of finding stuff and then rank the answer so that you get the best stuff. And this is also a really important step to make sure that what you pull is the best stuff to then assemble an answer with. If you grab crap and try to assemble an answer with crap, guess what's going to happen? It will respond with crap. So you can rank those responses, and then you send it over to another AI task or model that just basically says, okay, here's all the different pieces, here's the question, summarize an answer using all this different information. And again, you can get multiple answers, you can use multiple models, you can ask the same model to create several different types of answers, you can change the way you ask it to answer that question, and then you can rank that and pick the best answer. And based on which ones people, you can put in little feedback mechanisms or whatever, and then kind of tune the system along the way, right? So what's the impact of doing all this? You may say, Luke, well, that sounds like a lot of work. Why don't I just use ChatGPT to ask my question about why do so many designs look the same? Well, for starters, you get very different kinds of answers. If you ask ChatGPT, why do so many designs look the same? You get this very general world knowledge response is the way I like to think about it, right? Like economic factors, functional constraints, cognitive biases, and everything. It's not very opinionated. which maybe you want general world knowledge in case, that's fine if you want to get this really broad overview of what could be a response here. But if you instead constrain to a particular corpus of content, in this case, like digital version of me, then you get a much more pointed response, right? Look, it's because people tend to copy shit. And you can also get these citations that allow you to go deeper into what I call like an object experience, right? You get these sources from videos, audio, web pages, PDFs, and the like. And I promised I would go a little bit deeper into this, so I will. This is what I call this like object experience, right? It's unified in that it's like all integrated inside of this conversational interface, but each one is tuned a little bit for the different type of media we're dealing with, whether it's an audio file, a video file, or whatever. So if you look at a video, you're going to get that inline video experience you saw earlier. You can sort of scrub the timeline. You have the real-time translation of what's happening as the video is playing. We use different AI models to create a summary of the video, to extract the relevant topics in that video, to generate a transcript that you can then search in the transcript, and it'll take you to the specific point in the video that you're looking at. So all these pieces are put together by these little AI models. Hence my little AI dudes, remember? All of them like go into work to put all this stuff together. Audio mostly works the same way, except you have an audio player. There's no video. And here you can see the diarization at work, right? So this is a conversation with me and Jared. And so it breaks up who talks when, Luke, Jared, and does all these things. So we're using these diarization models in addition to these text-to-speech models, in addition to summarization, topic extraction, all that good stuff. For a web page, you're starting to get the feel of it right now, right? The content is always to the left. There's some stuff off to the right, and then you can sort of read the web page. I mentioned before, by default, when you enter into one of these object experiences, it's constrained to asking you questions in there, but you can X out and go back to these general questions. So you get the pattern. PDFs are mostly the same kind of thing, except there's a PDF reader instead of a document reader or a video player, an audio player, what have you. But PDFs are special in another way, as in painfully special. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's look at what happened to our answers. I have this set up so I can say only answer from web pages, only answer from PDFs, only answer from videos, answer from all, right, when you come back with these responses. And so at first we built this with just web pages, and then we added video, we added audio, and later we added PDFs. And when it was pre-PDF, if you asked a question like, what is design, you got an answer that I actually liked. Pretty opinionated, gradually applying constraints until only one solution remains, understanding the problem, iterating through possible solutions. It sounds like what I was talking about when I talked through the design process of this, right? So it's kind of like what I would say in response to this question. And you can see it's got a bunch of articles on it that it used to create this, right? Remove the unnecessary so the necessary may speak. I like this answer. This is a good one. When we put in the PDFs, this changed completely. And now it's directed towards human beings with the aim of identifying and executing it can be art, it can be aesthetics, I wouldn't ever call design art. I mean, maybe, but I don't, that's not something I would necessarily say. The fundamental soul of a human-made creation. So what the hell happened here? Well, it turns out this PDF had a bunch of quotes from other people about what is design. And so other people are like, it's the fundamental soul of the human creation is manifested through our consciousness. And so A, this answer kind of sucked, and then B, it kind of killed some of the diversity because this PDF, when we looked at what are the AI models paying attention to when they respond, they were just looking at these PDFs. And so when we open this up, you can see this is a listing of a lot of those chunks that it pulls back. And see all this jibba-jabba? This comes from the fact that PDFs are a layout format. And they have a ton of information in there to basically generate the pretty-looking pages you have in a PDF. And so you have to do an extra amount of cleaning for PDFs to get rid of that layout markup, right? And when you do, you're actually able to clean things up a lot. So you kind of remove this junk. But this is a nice example of where that cleaning step is really important. If you just go through and slurp up the content and then try to move it into meaningful chunks, you may end up really skewing what kind of responses you get. So what we did is we looked at a little open source AI model, saw what things it was paying attention to, and basically created a cutoff line where it never pays attention to these pieces of content, these chunks, and we just ignore those because they're not relevant. And so what happens now is when you ask what is design, you get an answer that I like a lot, and now you can see it's citing a PDF, a video, 2 podcasts, and a website. And there's other things that it's using as well. But again, lots of details here, right? So, hopefully, you now have a sense of what makes up this system that eats all this content. These 27 years of articles, books, videos, PDFs, and the like, right? So we got all this stuff. We do all these processes using all these different capabilities that we now have with AI. And when we don't have something we need exactly, we can kind of make our own. So hence all my little AI guys, right, hustling in the background, trying to do all these different things with language, with vision, whatever. And the end result, oh, I removed the audio. It was just delayed. Can I try that again? Sorry. And the end result, whatever, is not a scary AI thing, but it's a new way to make use of these 27 years of things I put together. So I'm going to end this with a meta slide, right? So let's use this designer-made AI to ask it what designers should do about AI. What should designers do about AI? And again, it's kind of what I've been talking about here, which tells me that this thing's working at least pretty good. They should focus on how AI can be used to enhance user experience and solve problems. That involves understanding what AI can do and then applying those capabilities to your designs. And overall, the point here is to make things for humans, right? To actually build things that people do use and need, and not to expose all this technology to people. It's not AI for AI's sake, right? It's AI for user experience's sake. And with that, on behalf of me and all my little AI guys, and I call them my AI guys because they're AI generated anyway. You can all try this out. However, as is the fate of the world, this morning, which is like 11 a.m. California time, I get a note that's like, oh, by the way, Luke, this thing is breaking, and we have one of the services that we're using shipping a fix in a few hours. So if you try to use it, let me actually just try it. Maybe they fixed it. I don't know. Oh, by the way, I can also now use this. Oh, this isn't showing. How can I fix this? Hold on. Is this down, up? Oh, cool. Okay, here. So this is really awesome for like putting in emails that send you. So this guy, people that send you, is like, I have this question about login, sign up. What do? I just put it inside the AI. It's sweet. So let's just try and see what happens. This may show the bug. It may not. But what does AI ate my website mean? I don't know if I spelled this right because I can't see anything there, but let's see what happens. Oh, cool. So the bug right now is it stops halfway through and then it stops halfway through and then kills itself. So bug's still there. It should be gone in a couple hours. If you want to try it, feel free, but otherwise, if I can get my cursor back, thank you very much.
Thomas, look. Would you join me for a little conversation? Oh, so many questions that came up in here. It's incredible.
Good ones. Well, can we just...
We have
plug them in? We only have 5 minutes? Okay, so I got to answer in real life. Okay.
Okay, one of the questions that actually came up relatively quickly was, what about privacy and copyright issues? Like, for example, Stack Overflow lost an incredible amount of traffic after ChatGPT became big, and more people are now leaving Stack Overflow because it does have a great archive, but there is barely any new stuff, especially around AI. So what do we do with that? Because actually I guess the idea is, or the question is, to get into the point where we have all this content that we've been producing for 27 plus years, right? And now we are using the generated content by AI instead of producing that same amount of content. So is it a problem? Is it fine? Where are we there?
So I have lots of thoughts on this topic, but let's talk philosophically for a second, and you may disagree with my philosophy here. That's totally relevant. I feel that everything I have written and created on my website is based on the experiences I've had over the years in conferences like this, in talking to people, in reading books. And so I'm already kind of pulling together the world knowledge that I get from other people and other sources into what I author and create, right? So for me personally, again, this is a personal belief, I am happy for my small part of this to contribute to this broader world knowledge. Because I feel like I've taken so much from the world and I contribute to it, right? Other people feel very differently, and they believe like there's copyright and maybe even stronger implications involved with that stuff. So that's kind of philosophically where I stand with it. In terms of what happens to new knowledge creation, super interesting question. Like one of the things that I've been playing with, which I haven't actually shipped, is there's a bunch of questions coming in all the time. And I can literally hit a button and publish a new piece of content that is a response to a question.
Based on what you have on the website already.
Based on the types of answers I showed you right now. But these are unique questions that there doesn't exist a page that says this, right? So I personally am torn. Like, do I publish that as new content? And what is new content? Because the recombination of it in response to a particular question, something new. Should I have it be a separate section and be like, this was half machine generated, half edited by me?
Yeah, like a watermark or so. This has been AI generated or anything like that.
Who knows, right? But we go through these transitions lots of times because I'm old as dirt, right? So I remember when people were putting posters on web pages and being like, okay, this is, and using an image map, right? So they sort of like transfer the previous thing to the new thing, and it takes a while to figure out how to use the new thing, what the norms around it are, right? Just even think about the norms around cell phone use, and is it okay for you to look at your phone in public or things like this? Like these things shift over time, and I don't think we'll get to a state where people are not producing new content, but how they produce it may change.
Yeah.
Right? So is Stack Overflow the quintessential thing that we have to preserve forever going forward? Stack Overflow is built on the basis of contributions by all these people, which when it came out, there was a ton of controversy about who owns this, who owns that, what are that. But over time, it faded because it provided this common good and benefit to like the entire development community.
Right.
All right. So we'll see. Long-winded answer because that is a really
of course,
this type of topic.
I actually really like the fact that you introduced this idea of scoping. So we basically say, okay, I want to now ask a question about stuff in that video or stuff in those videos or in that category and all. Because mostly it feels like it's in GET, as you were saying. You type in a question and then you get a very generic answer. You cannot really scope it. I mean, you can try to explain it, but I always feel a bit weird because I always say, dear ChatGPT, can you please... Anybody does that? Like talking to it? Yeah. Like, can you please be a little bit more funny or a little bit like more concise going to that domain? It's like, sure, I can do that. It's like,
it doesn't know what the hell you're saying, but that's okay.
That's okay, yeah. But I think like what's interesting is like, it's kind of connected to the next question that came up as well.
Yeah.
Like actually it's about learning. So we publish stuff and, let's say the AI gives you a response. And then potentially people could rate it. Was it useful? Was it not useful? And the question is, well, how would you actually educate people, users, in asking better questions to get better responses?
Yeah. So another thing we've been playing with there is at a certain point in time, like certain questions get re-asked, and one of the things that we've pushed to like testing but haven't actually shipped is, oh, that question you ask looks like one of these other questions that we kind of have a golden answer to. Right? And sort of like guiding people, like when you type a particular question one way, we can be like, does this look like any of the other questions that we actually have good answers to? And say, did you mean to ask something like this? Because for that, there's a good response. And if they ask something that veers off the rails, we can be like, well, we don't necessarily have a good response for that. Other interesting things to think about there is it is possible to not constrain any of these systems to any particular domain of knowledge and to allow it to make use of its world knowledge. So you could do something like, if nothing comes back in these documents, just answer with what you found on the internet.
Right.
But then you don't really
Like as a
have
backup option, almost a fallback.
yeah.
Yeah.
But then you don't have this, like you're asking a particular corpus of content. And you can sort of tune how much of that you bring in as well. Right? So you could be only in these situations, what have you.
Yeah, I think like one of the really critical parts for me is that we often see kind of this AI or ChatGPT, let's say, this thing that already exists, and this weird AI monster that we have created, right? But then what's interesting to me is that it's really evolving massively. So like, for example, I didn't know for months that actually with some systems, like they could go to the internet, to the real live online internet, be connected to the internet and actually look up things there. Some were kind of static archive for specific data, and that was the cutoff time, right?
Yep.
And so if you actually can then bring together this internet moment of going to the internet and then exploring answers in some specific places, that could be quite interesting too. Oh, somebody just deleted a ton of questions.
It was the AI.
Maybe.
It doesn't
maybe.
want us talking about it.
Oh, all right. Oh, here's another question that was interesting by Steph. How long did this entire thing take, your project? And how would you even budget for such a thing? It seems like a lot of effort.
Yeah, I mean, I think it took a lot of effort to figure out what to do with a mobile app. It took a lot of effort to figure out what to do with a website. Right?
All PDFs, all these different things.
Well, just in previous technology shifts, right? So I would expect similar, like the process it took for companies and organizations to become pseudo-digital by like shipping a website or an e-commerce presence or whatever. You could say those transitions took people years, not months. Same with mobile. Again, when mobile came around, people just pushed their website to a mobile browser and were done. It took years for companies to really think about what the mobile, and most of them probably still aren't there yet. So I would say it's going to be a similar thing here. And like those transitions, I encourage the same thing for people to do now, is like play with it. Try things. You can spend an hour and learn something. You can spend a month and learn something. To answer that particular question, this has been a little side project, so it hasn't been that much time, but we've probably spent maybe like 6 months here and there poking at it. The other thing that we've been doing, the reason why we started this project is because evaluation of what AI models produce is quite difficult. There's a bunch of these like benchmark things that aren't really that great. And so if you have a corpus of information where you can have a human evaluator, aka me, that can be like, oh yeah, that looks right, that looks like something I wrote, that's not something I wrote, we can get a bunch of feedback into the system to tune it.
There was also a question about that. I don't know, we're almost running out of time, but I think I still want to bring this question.
Sure.
Just how much feedback loop do you need to get to decent results? So like what was your kind of intensity of involvement? Was it like going through, I don't know, hopefully not 1,000, but hundreds of replies, evaluating, looking, oh, that's weird, oh, that's right. How did it go?
It depends on what you're trying to do. Some cases you can get away with like 100-something examples. Some cases you need thousands. Some cases you need more. When we did the video thumbnail thing, like I built that off of like 50 examples. And so we had, like 100 videos for 100 frames for each of the videos. And for like maybe it was only like 30 of them. I went through and picked the best one, and then we just sort of trained on that. So that wasn't a lot of content. But every time we make a change to the ranking or retrieval system, we have this little interface where I vote, the answer on the left is good, the answer on the right is good, both suck, both are good. And again, I'll usually do like 50 to 100 of those, and that's enough for us to see like which version is performing better and then kind of pick it. So it doesn't take a lot.
Okay, just two final questions.
Yeah.
One is, of course, whenever we have a conversation about AI, a question of sustainability comes in. Because again, in terms of energy consumption, it's massive. And if you think about using AI at scale, like imagine every single website was kind of using AI, that will create quite a footprint. In general, what are your thoughts on that? Is it something that we're probably going to get to a better, more sustainable AI in the future? Or is it just extremely intense and we need to maybe, I don't know, think about how do we put those things together so to minimize that impact?
It has to get faster and cheaper, and pretty much every technology company is working on that because it is really expensive and slow. And one of the biggest issues, if you go to asklukew.com, is how long it takes for the response to come in, because it's literally going as it kind of hones in. Sorry, bad analogy, but you get what I mean.
Yep.
It's not a very efficient, the inference process is not very efficient right now, and tons of people are working on it. So yeah, I think it will get a lot better.
Okay. There was a question that now is deleted for some reason. It
AI again.
Maybe, but it was about your shirt.
Yeah.
But I don't see it anymore now. Okay. So it's like, it seems like the gist of it went like, are you wearing the same shirt for the last 27 years?
Yeah. So this is you can actually ask Luke about this. Why is your color green, or why do you wear a green shirt? And it will tell you the answer.
So that's a little mystery right there.
If it works, I don't know. It seems to be broken now, but it's 3 in the morning in California, so I can't yell at people.
Okay, so that means that if we see you speaking at any point in the future, you're probably going to wear the same shirt.
I don't know about the same, but a green
shirt.
Yeah, a green shirt, yeah.
Okay, also if you want to find out the answer, you can either go online and ask Digital, Luke, I guess, what the answer is, or you can come back after lunch, which is going to happen next, and go to the Smashing membership stand, and we'll be driving our wonderful speakers there, so you can ask questions directly right there, all right? So for now, though, please give a warm round of applause to Luke. Thank you so much.